Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today, I will be sharing another special holiday recipe. In this video, I will show you how to make my Cranberry Orange Custard Pie. And by the way, I use my gluten-free pie crust. More on that later. Although I consider this a holiday pie, I actually think this pie is perfect anytime, but it's especially nice when you want a festive-looking dessert. The reason I think this pie is a perfect holiday treat is because it's a little bit different and it has an amazing pie filling. The pie filling itself is not sweet, it's nice and creamy with a light orange custard base, and the custard is contrasted with the tangy freshness of the cranberries, which are all baked together. In fact, I'd like to share a comment that one of my taste testers said when I asked him to describe this pie. And he said, "It tastes like a party in your mouth." So I hope you watch the video and get all the tips and tricks on how to make this pie. In order that you can tell how many slices you can enjoy, the macronutrient ratio for this cranberry orange pie is 4.5 to 1, with 10.7 grams of total carbs, 2.9 grams of soluble fiber, 1.3 grams of insoluble fiber, resulting in 6.5 grams of net carbs per slice of pie. To start with, for this cranberry orange custard pie, you will have to make my flaky pie crust. And I recommend that you make this first so that the pie crust has plenty of time to cool down before you fill it with a custard base. Because you will be putting the pie back into the oven to bake a second time, just a bit of advice I'd like to share with you. When you're blind baking it, don't bake it too much, maybe just a couple minutes less than the recommended for a blind baked pie. Also, I want to mention that in my pie crust recipe, I do not use any kind of cheese, and I most certainly never use vital wheat protein. And as a result, you get a much more real and classic tasting pie crust. I have made this pie crust in my previous video, and for your convenience, all important links are provided in the description box. The next thing you should do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. Although you can use frozen berries, I think for best results, try to use fresh cranberries. And with the cranberries, there's only one prep step. All you have to do is put them into a large bowl, toss them around to wash them, and while you're doing that, you should also remove any cranberries that look a little bit wilted or are too soft or have gone bad for any reason. The cranberries that you'll be using for this pie should be nice and firm. After you've removed any unwanted cranberries, just drain the berries into a sieve and then toss the cranberries onto a tea towel, and using the corners of the tea towel, just gently pat dry the berries. And then transfer the berries into the prepared pie shell. That's all the prep for the cranberries. Wasn't that easy? Then set this aside a moment while you prepare the custard. For the custard, you only use egg yolks, so save the whites for another recipe. After adding the egg yolks to the bowl, with the hand whisk, beat the eggs very well, but don't add air. You're not trying to make the egg yolks fluffy. All you want them to be is very well combined. Now, the next step to making the custard is to get a small pot, pour your heavy cream, the water, and the vanilla bean seeds, or if you don't have vanilla bean seeds, just substitute with 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. And then add the sweetener, which you ground to a fine confectioner powder. To create the orange flavor, you could use 1 teaspoon of orange extract, or as I'm doing, just peel an orange. I'm using a peeler to get the very thin layer of just the orange portion of the skin. You don't want a lot of the white because the white will make the custard taste more bitter. Once you've peeled your orange, just toss the peel into the pot with the cream mixture. Then place the pot on your stove top, and while the cream mixture is coming to temperature, whisk occasionally and cook over low heat until the liquid reaches 176 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 degrees Celsius. When the cream has reached the correct temperature, use a spider sift to scoop out and remove orange peel if that's what you used. You don't need the orange peel anymore, so just discard it. I'm going to share with you how I like to temper the eggs so that my eggs don't curdle. It's an easy technique, and how I do it is I very slowly pour 1 cup of hot liquid into the side of the bowl so that the liquid pours down the inside portion of the bowl. I never pour it directly onto the eggs. And as I'm pouring the liquid, simultaneously whisk so that everything combines very nicely. In this way, you're very slowly increasing the temperature and your egg yolks won't curdle. Because I'm making this into a nice custard, I'm also going to sprinkle the glucomannan, also known as konjac root powder, and after sprinkling it, immediately whisk to combine the powder into the liquid. This will thicken the custard. You need very little of this powder. A word of caution, please don't add too much of the glucomannan or whatever thickener you're using because it will become a solid and that's not what you want. Then just keep pouring in 1 cup at a time as I've described until you have added all the hot cream mixture. And the final pre-baking step is to simply pour the warm custard directly over your cranberries. The pie is now ready to be put into the middle position of my preheated oven, and I'm going to bake it for 35 minutes. And if needed, you can add another 5 minutes. It'll depend on your oven and whether you're using a glass or metal pie pan. And how you can tell that your pie is done is the custard itself near the pie perimeter should be somewhat firm and the center should be nice and jiggly. You don't want the whole thing to be firm, which would mean that you overbaked it. When your pie is all done, remove the pie from the oven and leave it in the pie pan. You want it to cool completely to room temperature. At this point, the pie is not quite ready to be served, so put it into the refrigerator for a minimum of 1 hour, or if you have time, leave it in the refrigerator overnight. This will develop the taste very nicely. And then depending whether you want to serve it directly out of your pie pan or not, the first thing you should do is take a knife and run it around the perimeter of the pan to loosen it. Then place a cutting board or some flat object on top of the pie pan and quickly flip it over. Give the bottom a light tap and lift the pan. And then use your serving plate to again flip the pie so that the berry side is up. By the way, this pie can be stored in the refrigerator for several days, but you should cover it with cling wrap. If you're wondering if this pie can be frozen, well, I'm sorry, I really don't know because every time I make it, this pie has never lasted long enough in our family for me to have leftovers to put in the freezer. It's that good. I hope that you will love this pie as much as we do. Serve it with pride, and I hope that you have a very healthy and happy holiday. All the best to you. Cheers!